One of the common refrains that you'll hear around this holy month of Pride is that love is tolerance. Now, what exactly is tolerance? And when we say tolerance, is that really a virtue that you should exhibit towards the people that you love? Now, perhaps the best way to exemplify this is by showing you what has been taking place in the church for far too long. Because the one place where we fall for the idea of tolerance being love is perhaps there most of all. For the longest time, the left has used tolerance as a tool to try to twist the arm of people who disagree with them and to tell them, well, if you don't agree with everything that I do, or at least stand back and celebrate why I do it, then it is because you are intolerant and you are a bigot. Now, because the Christian church is so afraid of being considered unloving, we have fallen for the idea that in order to be loving, we must be tolerant. But oddly enough, there is not an 11th commandment that says thou shalt be tolerant or thou shalt be nice. Now, it's nice to be nice, of course, but is tolerance just an extortive tactic to try to twist the arm of people to get them to acquiesce in ways that they normally would not? Well, to answer that question, I am going to show you what is the most ridiculous church service perhaps you have ever seen. So here is a Beyonce mass just in time to honor Pride Month. Here you go.
California, hundreds of folks are going to come here to witness the Beyonce mass.
Yo, I'm out of breath because we sing Beyonce in church. Holy cow.
What can you tell me about the progressive nature of Grace Cathedral?
I think a lot of the people who show up tonight are people of color, LGBT people, people on whom other people's narratives have been projected. And I mean, just to be honest, the church hasn't been the best about lifting up those voices. It really began as us saying, how can we actually be the people of God that we hope to be in the world?
And Beyonce is the perfect passage to get that message out there.
Honestly, I think Beyonce is a better theologian than many of the pastors and priests in our church today.
All right, well, there you go. We have come full circle from the martyrdom of Peter being crucified upside down, the beheading of Paul, to the Beyonce mass, the way to truly show your Christian fidelity. First off, just a statement that's kind of off the cuff here. That is the whitest Beyonce kind of rendition I think I've ever seen in my life. That is the cringiest cringe of cringe that I think I've ever seen. So congratulations on that one, church. At least you could do Beyonce better. So let's just put everything you own in a box to the left and just get as far away from that as possible. But the reason we really need to get away from it is not because it is so cringingly, awkwardly, awful, and detestably bad, but it is because it actually is vomitous in the mouth of God. Now, obviously, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek here, but sincerely, that Beyonce is a better theologian than many of our modern-day pastors. This idea that the church has diminished voices of color and LGBTQ, listen, maybe you think that because you are looking to the patron saint Beyonce rather than to look to the patron saint Paul or Peter or that whole, the Jesus guy. Maybe if you looked at that, you might actually find what the church really stands for. So this pastor says that the church has not been good at lifting up other people's voices. Well, there we are agreed, my friend, but the prescription here is going to be drastically different because I think that prescribing Beyonce's voice in church probably isn't as good as the voice of God. So isn't that the voice that we're supposed to be lifting up at the end of the day? I find it odd that these pastors are always willing to talk about marginalization, but they never want to talk about scriptural truth. Is it possible that scriptural truth marginalizes identities in this sense, that if you are doing something that is anti-God and anti-Christian, then yes, Jesus is going to marginalize that identity and say that that's not a legitimate one. See, because this church and the true church, the church of the scripture and the church of the culture, are two very vitally different things. This is why, dear friend, you think that there is a war between these two things. There is in this sense that the church of the culture, or the city of man as opposed to the city of God, is always going to be about uplifting contemporary narratives. And the church of God, the city of God, is always going to be about uplifting timeless truths, regardless of what people feel about it in contemporary society. That is how a society should hold together, by the way, because if you're merely shifting it based upon the status quo, well, by the way, the status quo is constantly changing. Some things never change, including death and taxes, but the status quo is constantly changing. So to constantly predicate what the church should be about based upon contemporary society is a lesson in madness. But here's the truth that I hope to get down to the bottom of at the end of the day. These men, if that's what you would call them, are actually only taking the seeker movement to its logical conclusion. In fact, these Beyonce mass holders may be more logically consistent than some in the seeker-sensitive church, because the ultimate idea of the seeker church is to focus your services based upon those who are in the outside world. Now, I understand a lot of people are not willing to go as far as the Beyonce mass in order to do that, and we're all better for it, trust me. But is it possible that the idea that we're supposed to conform what we do and even how we say things simply based upon people in the outside world, if that idea ultimately infringes upon what we actually teach, well, now we have an issue. Now, of course, there are people who will say that all we're talking about is style, not substance. But here's the problem. Style almost always impacts substance. Marshall McLuhan has this great book called Understanding Media, and in it he says this. He says the medium is the message. So maybe when we talk about like style and substance or medium and message, we've got it all wrong, because some pastors will say the medium must change to keep up with contemporary times, but the message must stay the same. Maybe in the process of changing our medium so much, we are also changing the messages in ways that we don't realize. And perhaps that's where tolerance really comes in. Maybe tolerance is actually being used as a tool to change what we think about very important issues. Now tolerance means something like the ability to change how you approach an issue so that we can slowly but surely change the way you think about it. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and back then, in 96, we were signing into law things like the Defense of Marriage Act, where Bill Clinton was saying, hey, marriage is between a man and a woman. 3 years later, he was basically codifying Pride Month in 1999 to be something that we celebrate in the month of June every single month. And then in 2015, Obergefell slowly but surely federalized marriage. And then in 2022, by our illustrious President Joe Biden, we find that now DOMA has been totally overturned. So it took about just a little over 20 years for what we think about this issue to radically and drastically change. Now, how did this happen? I can't help but wonder if Orwellian newspeak that tries to tell you that tolerance means love is really the way in which we have started to shift what we think about this actual issue. And by the way, if you don't know, newspeak is a purposeful attempt in the book 1984 to limit the range of thought to control people. See, if you can change what they think about things and limit the way they think about them, you can get them to totally change what they think on issues, and you can change the culture as a result of it. One of the newspeak tactics is doublethink, and that's the capacity to accept two contradictory beliefs at the same time. Can we as Christians truly tolerate the pride agenda? In one way, we can tolerate it in that we can accept that it exists. In another way, and more fundamentally important way, we must never accept it as though it is normal. And by the way, that means making sure that in our churches, we are not uplifting the voice of the LGBTQ marginalized person, but we're uplifting the voice of Jesus and hearing what he has to say on it. If you truly want to do something radical, if you truly want to do something edgy and groundbreaking, it wouldn't be Beyonce masses. It would be this. It would be actually standing up for truth, because by and large, the seeker-sensitive movement, the Christian evangelical church, has not been marginalizing people, has not been refusing to hear their voice, but they have been acquiescing to these voices for far too long in such a way that maybe we don't even know what the church we go to believes about the issue of homosexuality, because they haven't talked about it ever. So all I'm saying is this, is that this misnomer that the church is intolerant and judgmental and unloving is first of all not true, but second of all, not the goal. The goal is truly to love people, and that's not tolerance. Tolerance is putting up with behaviors that may be damaging to people. Now, in what world is that love? Only in a world where we think abuse of people and their bodies and gender mutilation is actually affirming and loving. See, we can't allow the world to define terms like love for us, or else we'll be stuck with things like tolerance.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.